For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Local Youth Worker, a daily podcast brought to you by Reformed Youth Ministries. I'm your host, John Parrott. As we head into the summer months, I wanted to give our listeners some updates about our future episodes, as well as what we'll be doing throughout the months of June and July. The first update we want to make you aware of is that we've finally secured a new domain name for our website. So it's now rym.org. So the opening line from Joey Stewart will be the first notable difference you will begin to hear as we start off our next season. The second update is for the months of June and July, the Local Youth Worker will begin airing reruns. Any good show has reruns, and that will obviously be the case for this podcast. Part of the reason is due to the fact that I'll be traveling to 5 of RYM's summer conferences. If you're unaware of our conferences, be sure to visit rym.org and click on the conference tab. So travel is one of the reasons we'll air reruns. Another reason is due to the fact that we now have a lot of episodes, 170 to be exact. So you've probably missed some, and we've also gained some new listeners as we've been doing this. We'll be rerunning some of the most popular episodes. The third update is that we plan to start our next season sometime in August. For the second season, we will be parting ways with our 5 basic questions. While we may revisit that from time to time, we wanted to head in a new direction and ask youth workers questions they often receive from their students. The theme of this season will be when a student says ... For example, when a student says, I'm addicted to porn, but I want to stop, what would you tell that student? Or I want to go into the ministry, but my parents don't want me to. What advice would you give? Or another example, my friend came out as gay. What should I say to them? These scenarios and questions and many more will be posed to the local youth workers around the United States, and maybe even outside of the United States. And we will wrestle with these in community together. While we're changing the theme of the show with these new questions, we will still have counselors, seminary professors, and authors that frequent the show. So know that those guests will continue to be a part of the show. A fourth update is that RYM plans to launch 2 more podcasts in the fall. One is a parenting podcast entitled Parenting Today, taking the theme from Matthew 6, which encourages us not to worry about tomorrow, focus on today. Parenting Today was also not only created with this Matthew 6 in mind, but a podcast that deals with today's issues and concerns that parents are wrestling with. We are still ironing out the details of this podcast, but we think this will be a twice-a-week podcast, and each episode will be around 15 minutes. So stay tuned for more information about this. Our second podcast is a student podcast, and we're still working on the name of this podcast. But it will air on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They will be about 3 to 5 minutes in length and will be snippets from RYM summer conferences. These will be clips from elective classes and main speakers speaking on a range of topics. And so here's just some ideas of how we hope you'll utilize this podcast. For the youth workers that are listening, we ask that you encourage, maybe even force your students to download this podcast. Encourage them to listen to it on the way to school or after school or just before bed, just at some point during the day. We know students are busy and often aren't in the Word, but they vitally need to be hearing biblical truth. So we hope this makes it a bit easier to have these brief biblical thoughts throughout the week. Youth workers, we also hope that you'll let parents know about this podcast. For the parents, we know family devotions can be a struggle and busyness can make this happen less frequently. So please utilize this podcast as a family devotional tool. Deuteronomy 6 talks about diligently impressing the faith upon the next generation as you walk down the road. So we hope that parents will use this podcast when driving their children to school or to practice. Use it around their breakfast table in the morning or the dinner table at night. Just click play and discuss some of the content with your kids. We hope this is another way RYM can serve the local church and the families that make up that church. Lastly, on behalf of RYM, I simply want to say thank you. We had no idea what we were doing when we launched this podcast. In many ways, we still don't know, and we're still learning. We didn't know if anyone would listen, and we didn't even know where to begin. It's been awesome to see how the Lord has used this podcast and to hear how it's blessed so many. Again, we have over 170 episodes with over 20,000 downloads and are being downloaded across the United States and in other countries. And I simply say that to say God be praised and to thank those who do listen to this podcast. Please continue to spread the word about all RYM is doing to pass the faith on to the next generation. We want to serve the local church by ministering to students, parents, and youth workers. If you are encouraged, blessed, or appreciate what RYM does, please consider partnering with us by donating to this ministry. We're a 501c3 organization that needs donations from the people of God. Please consider supporting us in our efforts. If you go to rym.org and click on the Donate tab, which is in the top right corner of the page, that would greatly help us. Also, the music you hear each week was created by Joe Deegan, and it's on his CD entitled Cover and Title Page, which you can find on iTunes. When we use that music, Joe is not on staff with RYM, but he is now our music resources coordinator. He'll be producing new albums and assisting RYM with the music ministry, so stay tuned for those resources. Once again, thank you for your support, and be sure to visit rym.org for more resources. Have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in this week to the Local Youth Worker. As always, we hope you've been encouraged and equipped in your call as youth workers. If you take time to rate this podcast on iTunes, that would greatly help us. As always, we want to thank Joe Deegan for providing the music and encourage you to go out and purchase his newest CD, Cover and Title Page, which you can find at iTunes. See you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
Oh, come and buy without money. Oh, come and feast without pay. For the King has opened his banquet hall to the beggar, the outcast, and the slave. For the King has opened his banquet hall to the beggar, the outcast, and the slave.